Imagine this. You are a pharaoh of ancient Egypt, living more than 3,500 years ago. Your death is not something that catches you off guard. It is prepared from the moment you take the throne. And the most important part of that preparation is a secret scroll. A scroll that ordinary people are absolutely forbidden to read. But here is what nobody tells you about that scroll. It does not talk about prayers. It does not talk about gods. It describes 12 distinct geographical regions, with rivers, with deep ravines, with caverns, and with creatures guarding every single gate, as if someone had actually been there and drawn it all from memory. So here is my question for you right now. If this scroll is a real map, where exactly does it lead? Drop one word in the comments. Above or below, I will reveal what the scholars actually concluded before this video is over. Here is something that stops most people cold. The Amduat was not written for everyone. For nearly 500 years, only the pharaoh was allowed to possess this text. Not the priests, not the generals, not even the highest nobles in the land, just the king. So the question worth asking is this: why would a civilization that built the greatest monuments in human history lock away one specific document from nearly every human being alive? The standard answer from textbooks is simple. It was a religious guide, a spiritual roadmap for the afterlife. But here is where it gets interesting. Religious texts describe feelings, they describe faith, they describe devotion. This one describes geography, 12 separate regions, each with its own name, each with its own terrain, each with rivers running through the center, mountains rising on the sides, and gates locked from the inside. That is not a prayer book. That reads like a field report. And that distinction is exactly what a growing number of independent scholars are now debating openly. Let us ground this in the actual historical record. The Amduat is not a rumor. It is not a conspiracy theory. It is one of the most thoroughly documented funerary texts in the ancient world. Its full name in ancient Egyptian translates to the writing of the hidden chamber. The oldest surviving version was discovered inside tomb KV-34 in the Valley of the Kings near modern-day Luxor, Egypt. That tomb belongs to Pharaoh Thutmose III, who ruled from approximately 1504 to 1450 BCE, making the core text roughly 3,500 years old. Now here is the detail that most people skip over. The walls of that burial chamber were deliberately painted to resemble aged papyrus scrolls. Not stone, not marble, papyrus. As if the architects wanted the reader to feel they were holding something, rather than standing inside something. The text itself catalogs 741 individual deities spread across 12 regions. Each region has its own terrain description, its own population of beings, its own set of rules for navigation. Scholar Erich Hornung of the University of Basel, who produced the most comprehensive modern edition of the Amduat, described it as the oldest of all Egyptian afterlife books and the template from which all later ones were drawn. That is not a minor text. That is the original source code of an entire civilization's understanding of what lies beyond death.
So what exactly is inside this scroll? Let us walk through it together. The Amduat divides the underworld into 12 hours of the night. Each hour is a separate region. Each region has its own landscape, its own inhabitants, its own specific dangers. Hour 1. Ra, the sun god, enters the underworld on a solar boat, traveling a river that runs through the center of the earth. The river does not flow randomly. It has banks, it has depth, it has direction. Hours 2 and 3. The waters transform. The text calls them the waters of Osiris. Other beings join the journey. The terrain widens. Hour 4. Everything changes. Ra enters a region called Imhet, a barren desert of total darkness. He navigates by voice alone. Hour 5. Lakes of fire appear, scorching heat for the condemned, and purification for the worthy. Hour 6. The deepest point. Unknown gods. A colossal lion. 3 shrines that must not be spoken of. Hour 7. The chaos serpent Apophis appears. Hours 8 through 10. Gradual ascent begins. The terrain shifts back to water. Hour 11. Fire pits, monstrous beings, the final punishment regions. Hour 12. Dawn breaks. Ra is reborn. Does this sound like mythology to you? Or a place someone actually passed through? Here is where I want to offer a perspective you will not find in most mainstream discussions. Look at the physical structure of the Amduat. It is divided into 3 horizontal layers: top register, middle register, Bottom register. The middle register is always the river. The top and bottom registers are the banks and the surrounding terrain of the Amduat. Now consider how modern geology describes the Earth. 3 primary structural layers of the Earth. The crust near the surface, the mantle in the middle, the core at the deepest point. Each layer has its own temperature, its own composition, its own behavior. The hypothesis here, and I want to be clear, this is a hypothesis, not an established academic conclusion, is that the Amduat's 3-register structure mirrors a physical and profound understanding of depth that we would not expect an ancient civilization to possess. What makes this even more interesting is the temperature progression. In the Amduat, the deeper Ra travels, the more heat appears. Hour 4 of the journey brings darkness. Hour 5 of the journey brings fire. Hour 6 brings the most mysterious and compressed region. Hour 11 brings the most intense heat of the entire journey. That is not random storytelling. That is a heat gradient described in sequence. I am not claiming the ancient Egyptians had drilling equipment, but I am suggesting that it is worth asking how a civilization with no modern instruments consistently described increasing heat alongside increasing depth, because that pattern is geologically accurate. And accuracy requires either an extraordinary coincidence or it requires extraordinary knowledge. This is not a conversation, but a discovery happening only in history books. The exhibition titled Quest for Immortality, hosted in DC, which centers on the Amduat and related ancient texts, has been traveling across the United States, traveling since the year 2001. It has been hosted by major institutions, including the National Geographic Museum in DC, Egyptologist Jan Essman, a leading scholar, exploring the religion of ancient Egypt, who has written extensively on the subject, about the Amduat's relationship to the stars, to what he calls solar theology, the sun's nightly disappearance over the plateau, representing a real journey through time, through a real and physical subterranean space that the Egyptians believed existed beneath their feet. Meanwhile, independent researchers have begun their work in the fields of archaeoastronomy and archaeogeology, mapping the spatial descriptions in the Amduat against known subterranean geological features. In the northeastern African region, no definitive conclusions have been published yet, but the conversations are definitely happening. And here is what I find personally compelling about all of this information. The ancient Egyptians were certainly not guessing. When they built the pyramids, they were certainly not guessing.
When they aligned their temples to the stars with near-perfect accuracy. So the question worth sitting with is this: were they guessing about the underworld, or did they have a source?
Here is the thought I want to leave you with. The ancient Egyptians spent 3,500 years refining their understanding of death. They did not fear it, they mapped it. They assigned names to every region, temperatures to every layer, guardians to every gate. They built an entire civilization around the idea that what lies beneath us is not empty. Now here is the uncomfortable question. We live in 2026. We have satellites orbiting Mars. We have artificial intelligence decoding proteins and ancient languages. We have mapped the surface of the moon with higher resolution than we have mapped our own ocean floor. And yet, the deepest hole ever drilled by human beings, the Kola super deep borehole in Russia, reached only 12 kilometers down before the heat became too extreme to continue. 12 kilometers. The Earth's radius is over 6,300 kilometers. We have explored less than 0.2% of what lies beneath us. So when an ancient civilization spent 3.5 millennia documenting what they believed was down there, with rivers and gates and fire and transformation, maybe the more honest response is not to dismiss it. Maybe the more honest response is simply to ask, what did they know that we still do not? Before you go, here are 3 things worth taking with you. First, the Amduat is a real historical document, verified by decades of academic scholarship. It is not myth dressed as history. It is history dressed as myth, and the difference matters enormously. Second, the most advanced civilizations in human history treated death as something to be understood, not feared. That is a posture worth borrowing. Third, humility is not weakness. The fact that we have explored less than 0.2% of our own planet's interior, should make all of us a little more careful about what we are willing to rule out. If you found this perspective worth your time, share it with someone who thinks ancient history has nothing left to teach us. And if you want more content that takes the ancient world seriously, you already know what to do.